All right, Marty. So you and your dad start Linear Logix. What year did you guys start?
Well, the company's been around since I think '97, but it was doing a different type of business back then. That's when my dad ran it. I was very young, but we reopened a new business. We do electrical engineering, software engineering. We've been around for doing that for, I want to say, at least 5 years now.
Okay. So did your dad run Linear Logix? Because he worked for GE, right? Was it GE he worked for?
Yeah, he did work for GE.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was running Linear Logix as he worked for them?
No. So Linear Logix was started after he left GE.
Okay.
And it was started with the understanding that some of the people he was working with would also leave with him, and they could kind of, there was a niche that needed to be filled in the automation industry for freight rail yards.
Uh-huh.
And our rail yards just in America are they're pretty outdated. And, if you look at the rail industry in a lot of other countries, they're way ahead of us in tech, and not only for commuter, but also for freight transportation. And GE used to design control systems to speed up the process of pushing cars or getting cars classified in what are commonly called classification yards.
Okay.
They're basically like, you can think of them as just kind of like an airport, but for rail yards, where a string of cars will come in. They all have a different destination. Shippers are basically sending their supplies or shipping whatever they need to ship across the country, and their car or their shipments will be attached to a string of cars, and a train will pull them into a classification yard, and that yard will pull each car apart, and they'll classify it into its own little track, and each track goes to a different part of the country, and it just keeps doing that, kind of like mail hubs as well. It just keeps going through multiple.
Do they have it like already, like does each car have like a QR code or like a certain like scanner that just scans and gets pushed one direction and then the other kind of shuffles through?
Yeah, typically they have a tag, an RFID tag, and they get scanned, and when it gets scanned, it has everything about the destination, the shipper, the contents, if it's biohazard, stuff like that.
I guess I've never really thought about that. I just figured it went in
Just
the car.
gets there.
It got like
it just
it
went.
got, like
it's magic.
Like I figured
It's
they put it in the car in Miami, and then if it's going to California, it just goes to California. But I guess
it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah,
sounds like.
So in these shipyards, I feel like there's probably tons of different tracks there where it can kind of get fed into each one, so it makes its own long.
Yeah, some classification yards have as many as 30, 40, 50 tracks. They're called ladder tracks. And it's like you can look at it like a rung of ladder, like ladder rungs when you look up from the sky and you look down on it. And they'll just, wherever it needs to go, they'll kick it into one of those tracks, and for each car, and they'll rebuild the car. They'll pull them apart and rebuild them, and then that string will be off to the next,
and then redo it until it's all the same.
Eventually, it'll all be going to the
spot.
same location.
Okay, so your dad's working for GE, and he finds this niche market for.
Well, before you get into that, so you mentioned that your dad was supposed to go with a bunch of folks. Did they come along or no?
So the deal is, GE was providing automation systems, and we can talk about that in a bit, but they were providing automation systems for these rail yards, and they didn't want to do it anymore because there wasn't enough money in it. I don't know how much they were spending on man hours, employees. I don't know what not enough money is to GE, but I imagine, this industry probably, or this market probably just wasn't doing it for them, and so they stopped providing control systems. But the thing is, GE still provides, they sell pneumatic switches. They're automatic smart switches, and if you know what a rail yard switch is, it's what changes the position of a track at a certain juncture. So when a train's coming up on it, those handheld levers that the old school, you watch
Westerns,
those old school videos.
The Western,
the engineer
lasso
will hop out.
They lasso it ahead of time and turn it.
Yeah, they'll hop out. They'll throw the switch
3.
by hand, and then they'll hop back in, and then they'll go, the direction they need to go. So these automatic switches are smart switches with radios and circuit board in it, and you can control it from a distance.
Okay.
You can control it, from a tower, from a panel, so it speeds things up quite a bit. GE didn't want to make the control systems to control their switch. They just wanted to sell their switch. So as soon as they stopped doing that, customers said, well, why would I buy the switch if I can't get a control system for it? It's useless. I mean, you can still walk up to it and push the button. It's easier than pulling a lever, but that's not what it was designed for.
Yeah.
So he said, well, there's a lot of people complaining, and we can do that because he designed most of the control systems when he was working for GE, so he's very familiar with them. And he said, we'll just, hop out, open a company, and just do this ourselves. There's plenty of demand. We know the customers. We know there's demand for it. We can just kind of jump right into it and start filling that need.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
So him and a group of other guys just said they were going to do it?
Yeah, I think there were two or three other guys that were like, yeah, we'll do that with you. And when the time came to, get on the pot or, get off, they were like, no, I don't want to risk it.
It's so hard.
Yeah, it's that jump. It's tough for people.
Yeah, but your dad said, you know what? To hell with you. I'm doing it anyways.
Yeah.
Well, that's about the time that, he wasn't going to go in alone. So he asked me, and I have a legal studies degree, and I was about to take the LSATs and head to law school. I was going a totally different path, but I've grown up around computers and technology my whole life. So the law school thing was just to give myself a future and a stable career. And he said, you want to do this with me? I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it.
Hell yeah.
We jumped into it. And
so did you have to go another route for school purposes, or did you have enough background where you could just learn on the job?
So I've pretty much been doing this my whole life. I've been writing code since I was like 12 years old. So as long ago as I can remember. So pretty much what they were doing, I was able to just jump in and figure it out.
What do you write in mainly? Or back then at least?
My first language was Visual Basic.
Okay.
And I do Visual Basic, C++, C, C#. I do a lot of stuff. So
that means nothing to us regular folks. So
I know what it means, but I don't know what it means. It's like I understand it, but don't. So I get it.
And C is really important, especially when you go into OS level stuff.
Hardware level stuff.
Yeah.
Because, C is, it's really, you can use operating systems with C, but C is for just bare metal applications.
Right.
Like directly onto a microprocessor.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is probably what you...
We do a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. So
when he asked you, you were like, yeah, screw this LSAT stuff.
Well, did you take the LSAT?
No.
Okay.
I had the flashcards. I was getting ready. I was getting ready to study and take it, and I was just like, you know what?
You were like,
let's do the fun. I pick the fun option. So
okay.
Yeah.
Which honestly, that's a great point, because how old were you at that point?
Probably around 29, 28.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess you were a little older, so I mean, it wasn't like not like you were 20 and said, yeah, screw this, I'm going to go do the computer thing.
It's still impressive though, right? Because like, in a sense, you're trying to really set yourself up for the rest of your life, and then you're just saying, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. It sounds exciting, etc. Right? I mean, were you working somewhere else at that time?
No, I was just I was not working. I was just studying for school. That's pretty much all I was doing at the time. So I didn't have any, I was actually I think I was still living at home at the time too, even. Well, I might have been living next door. I actually lived right next door to my dad. My grandparents lived in that house. So at the time, I think I was living next door actually on my own. But
so being that
I took a long time to finish to get my 4-year.
No,
I did it.
So even though you went into law for that stable career, you had to have at least some interest or some love of law then?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, because I'm like a pretty logical thinker, but I don't think I would have enjoyed law because of that.
Law has no logic.
It's very vague. It's very, it can
very
be twisted
gray.
Sometimes, a lot of gray area.
Yes,
exactly.
a lot of gray.
So,
and there's no creativity. Like to me,
there is.
Oh no, there's a lot of creativity.
but I
to get away with it, or
if you see a good lawyer, there's a lot of creativity.
You have to be creative. Exactly.
Agreed, but I think what I'm thinking of is more like, for me, like on the programming side, you're actually making something
not creating
from
anything.
scratch.
Yes,
right, and that's what I meant is that you're actually making something that works,
Yeah.
and you see it at work versus manipulating something.
Yeah, I'm more suited to design something and know what I'm doing is going to have a certain result rather than diving into
then a maybe that's
like
judged
entering
by
a courtroom
somebody
and not knowing what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
But I was looking
absolutely.
at going into real estate law, so that would have, not like the whole you see on the movies, the prosecutors. I wasn't looking to do that because I'm not.
Because I know, just from you being, Marty is my brother, my older brother's friend. They've been friends for a long time, and I always knew you were like into computers and stuff like that, But Will had told me that you were going to law school to be a real estate attorney, and I was like, it really didn't add up in my head, but I was like, good for him, like absolutely, like.
I think
whenever I did hear it, I was like, yeah, it didn't add up in my head, but.
So the thing with, my dad has his PhD in computer science, and he's a programmer / electrical engineer, and it was kind of him that kind of pushed me. He's like, you don't want to be a programmer. They're a dime a dozen. There's just so many programmers out there. A lot of stuff gets outsourced. You just can't pull in a good salary. I mean, there are programmers that pull in a good salary, right? But a lot of them might live in Silicon Valley, those big, E4 level engineers that are, but in general, I was just kind of under the impression that he's probably right. Like, I probably wouldn't be able to make a really comfortable living as a programmer. And I don't think that's what I want to do anyway, but working for yourself, it's different. We're designing things. We're creating solutions, and it's a lot more fun than just sitting down and writing code.